The Velthari had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They were tall creatures standing nearly 3 meters high, with scales the color of dried blood and eyes that glowed like dying embers. Their mouths held 3 rows of teeth, each one sharp enough to cut through bone. They had claws that could tear metal. They moved fast, faster than any creature they had ever met. They were hunters. It was all they knew. It was all they were. Long ago, on their home world, they had been pack predators. They hunted in groups of 20 or 30, chasing down anything that moved, eating anything that bled. When they developed technology, they did not change. They simply found bigger things to hunt. First, they hunted the other species on their planet. Then they built ships and went to the stars. And they hunted there too. In 12,000 years, they had conquered 47 worlds. Some of those worlds had intelligent life. It did not matter. To the Velthari, intelligence meant nothing. Strength meant everything. If a species could not fight back, it was prey. If it was prey, it was food. The Velthari dominion stretched across 100 star systems. They had billions of soldiers, thousands of warships, and an empire built on blood and bone. No species had ever defeated them. No species had ever come close. Supreme Huntmaster Kethver was the greatest warrior of his generation. He had led the conquest of 6 worlds himself. He had killed millions with his own claws. When he walked through the corridors of his flagship, other Velthari moved out of his way. They feared him almost as much as they respected him. When the long-range probes found a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, Kethver was the one who reviewed the data. He sat in his command chamber, surrounded by screens showing images of this new world. He saw oceans and continents. He saw cities glowing with light at night. He saw billions of creatures moving through those cities, living their small lives. Unaware that death was watching them from the stars, the creatures called themselves humans. Kethver studied them carefully. He watched recordings of them walking, talking, eating, sleeping. He measured their bodies and tested their capabilities through the probe scanners. What he found made him smile, and when a Velthari smiled, it was never a good thing for anyone nearby. The humans were soft. They had no scales, no armor, no natural protection of any kind. Their skin was thin and easily torn. They had no claws, no fangs, no venom. They were slow, barely able to run faster than a Velthari could walk. Their young took years to grow strong enough to survive on their own. They spent a third of their lives unconscious, sleeping, completely helpless. By every measure the Velthari used to judge prey, humans were perfect. They were weak, they were many, and they had no idea what was coming for them. Kethver called a meeting of the Dominion Council. The 12 most powerful Velthari in the Empire gathered in the great hall of the flagship, their scales gleaming under the cold lights. Kethver stood before them and showed them what he had found. A new hunting ground, he said. Billions of prey. Soft flesh, slow bodies, primitive weapons. They have split atoms and reached their moon, but they have never left their own system. They do not know we exist. They are not ready for us. The council members leaned forward, their eyes bright with hunger. One of them, an old female named Sethrix, asked a question they were all thinking. How long until we can begin the harvest? 3 cycles, Kethver answered. I will lead the fleet myself. There was no debate. There was never any debate when prey was found. The Velthari did not ask whether they should hunt. They only asked how soon they could begin. Kethver spent the next 3 cycles preparing his fleet. He gathered 500 warships, each one carrying thousands of warriors. He loaded drop pods with hunting parties. He prepared the processing ships that would follow behind, ready to collect the harvest and turn flesh into food. Everything was done the way it had always been done, because it had always worked before. On the day the fleet departed, Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the stars blur as they entered faster than light travel. He thought about the blue planet waiting for him. He thought about the billions of soft creatures walking on its surface, unaware that they had already been marked for death. He felt no guilt. He felt no doubt. Why would he? The strong ate the weak. That was the law of the universe, the only law that mattered. Humans were weak. Therefore, humans were food. It was simple. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the human solar system. Kethver ordered a full scan of the area. He found human satellites, human space stations, human probes scattered throughout the system. He found radio signals carrying human voices, human music, human stories. He listened to some of them, curious about what prey sounded like when it did not know it was being watched. They sounded happy. They sounded busy. They sounded completely unaware. Disable their communications first, Kethver ordered. Then neutralize any orbital defenses. Standard protocol. His officers obeyed without question. Valkyrie electronic warfare systems were thousands of years more advanced than anything humans had. Within minutes, satellites went dark. Space stations lost power. The planet below suddenly went quiet. Its billions of inhabitants cut off from each other, confused, frightened. Not yet understanding what was happening, Kethver watched the blue planet grow larger on his screens. He could see the lights of human cities, still glowing, still unaware. He imagined his warriors dropping from the sky, tearing through human streets, filling their ships with human flesh. He imagined the fear in human eyes when they finally understood what was happening to them. "Begin the harvest," he commanded. 500 ships moved toward Earth, drop pods launched by the thousands, falling through the atmosphere like metal rain. Kethver stood at his window and watched them fall, watched the first fires begin to bloom on the planet's surface. He was still smiling. He did not know that he would be dead before the next sunrise. He did not know that his entire fleet would burn. He did not know that in trying to hunt humanity, he had made the worst mistake in the history of his species. The Valkyrie saw humans as prey. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first drop pods hit 6 continents at the same time. They came down in New York and Lagos, in Tokyo and London. In Sydney and Sao Paulo, they crashed through buildings and buried themselves in streets. And then they opened, and the Valkyrie came out. In the first hour, 3 million humans died. The aliens were everything the reports had promised. They were fast, crossing 50 meters in seconds. They were strong, tearing through walls like paper. Their weapons fired beams of light that turned human bodies to ash. They moved in packs of 20 or 30, sweeping through city blocks, killing everything they found. Human soldiers tried to fight back. Bullets bounced off Valkyrie scales. Explosions slowed them, but did not stop them. Tanks were flipped over like toys. Jets were shot down before they could fire. Everything humanity had built to fight other humans was useless against these monsters from the stars. In the first day, governments fell. Capitals burned. Military bases went silent. The Valkyrie moved through human cities like wolves through a field of sheep, and they did not stop to rest, did not stop to think, did not stop at all. Kethver watched from his flagship and felt satisfied. This was how it always went. Shock and terror, death and destruction, and then surrender. Every prey species they had ever hunted had broken in the first few days. Humans would be no different, but Kethver did not understand humans. None of the Valkyrie did. They did not understand that humans had spent their entire history fighting things bigger and stronger than themselves. They had faced ice ages that should have killed them. They had survived plagues that wiped out half their population. They had fought predators with nothing but sharpened sticks, and they had won. They did not understand that fear, for humans, was not a signal to give up. It was a signal to fight harder. General Amara Okonkwo was 53 years old when the invasion began. She had spent 30 years in the military, fighting wars that now seemed small and pointless. When the aliens came, she was commanding the West African Defense Coalition from a bunker beneath Lagos. In the first day, she lost contact with 90% of her forces. She watched satellites go dark. She listened to radio channels filled with screaming, then static, then silence. She saw her city burn from camera feeds that died one by one. She did not give up. She did not even think about giving up. "Find me anyone who is still fighting," she ordered her staff. "Anyone, anywhere. Connect them to me." It took time, but they found them. Scattered groups of soldiers, hiding in ruins, still alive, still armed. Civilians who had picked up weapons from dead soldiers and were fighting back on their own. Police officers, hunters, farmers, anyone with a gun and the will to use it. Okonkwo gathered them all. She built a network of resistance cells across 3 continents, all connected by hidden communication lines the Veltari had not found. And she sent them a message, the same message she sent to everyone who was still fighting. "They hunt in packs," she said. "So do we. They are fast for short bursts. We do not stop, ever. They see us as meat. Let us show them what meat can do when it is angry." The Veltari did not understand what was happening at first. They had broken human governments, destroyed human armies, killed millions of human civilians. By every measure they knew, the war was over. But humans kept fighting. Small groups of humans would attack Veltari patrols, kill a few aliens, then disappear into the ruins. The survivors would be tracked and killed, but more would appear the next day. And the next. And the next. The Veltari were not built for this kind of war. They were sprinters, not marathon runners. They attacked in explosive bursts of violence, killed their prey, and rested. They could not understand an enemy that never rested, never stopped, never gave them a moment of peace. There was a reason for this. A reason buried deep in human history. Long ago. Before humans built cities or invented writing, they hunted on the African plains. They were not the fastest animals. They were not the strongest. But they had one advantage that no other predator had. They could sweat. Other animals had to stop running to cool down. Humans did not. They could run and sweat at the same time, keeping their bodies cool, keeping their muscles working. So they developed a hunting technique that no other predator used. They chased their prey. Not fast, not sprinting, just steady and constant. The prey would run away, then stop to rest. The humans would catch up. The prey would run again, then stop again. The humans would catch up again. This would go on for hours, sometimes days, until finally the prey's heart gave out from exhaustion. It would collapse, and the humans would walk up to it and kill it with their sharpened sticks. Persistence hunting, it was called. The ability to simply never stop until the prey was dead. Now, for the first time in their history, the Veltari were the prey. Colonel James Whitmore led the first successful counterattack in Snow Hollow. His team had 23 soldiers, all that remained of his original battalion of 800. They had been fighting for 3 weeks, sleeping in shifts, eating whatever they could find, never staying in one place for more than a few hours. The Veltari hunting pack that found them had 30 warriors, all fresh and rested. They chased Whitmore's team through the ruins of the city, certain they had cornered their prey. Whitmore had planned for this. He had spent 3 weeks learning how the Veltari thought. He knew they could not resist chasing prey that ran. So he ran. He led them through streets filled with rubble, through buildings rigged with explosives, through tunnels that opened into kill zones where hidden snipers waited. The Veltari followed because that was what predators did. They chased. When it was over, 27 Veltari were dead. Whitmore had lost 8 soldiers, but he had proven something important. The aliens could be beaten. The aliens could be killed. The aliens could be made to chase their own deaths. Word spread through the resistance networks. Other cells tried the same tactics. Some failed, some succeeded, but all of them learned. Humans were very good at learning. Kethver, still watching from his flagship, began to feel something he had never felt before in a hunt. Doubt got the prey was not breaking. The prey was fighting back. The prey was learning faster than his warriors could adapt. For the first time in 12,000 years, a Velthari Supreme Huntmaster wondered if he had made a mistake. 6 months after the invasion began, the Velthari controlled the skies. They controlled the major cities. They controlled every power plant, every military base, every important piece of ground on the planet. By every measure they understood, they had won the war. But the war was not over. It was just beginning. Deep beneath a mountain in what had once been Switzerland, a group of scientists worked in secret. They had been brought together from every country, every specialty, every background. Physicists and engineers, biologists and chemists, hackers and weapons designers. They had one job: understand the enemy. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was in charge of the communications team. She was 34 years old, small and quiet, with hands that never stopped moving. Before the invasion, she had studied radio astronomy, listening to signals from distant stars. Now she listened to signals from alien ships. The Velthari used faster-than-light communication. Their messages traveled instantly across the galaxy, allowing ships to coordinate from thousands of light years apart. It was technology that humanity had never imagined possible. Tanaka cracked it in 4 months. It is not magic, she told her team when they finally broke through. It is just physics we did not understand yet. Now we understand. She was right. The Velthari had developed their FDL communication system over 1,000 years, slowly improving it generation after generation. Tanaka's team, working with captured equipment and desperate determination, had figured it out in less than half a year. This was something the Velthari did not understand about humans. They learned fast. Very fast. The Velthari had stopped innovating thousands of years ago. Why would they? They were the strongest species they had ever met. They had no competition, no threats, no reason to improve. Their technology was ancient, refined, but stagnant, unchanged for millennia. Humans had never had that luxury. Humans had always been at war with themselves. Every generation developed new weapons, new tactics, new ways to kill. It was a terrible thing, this constant arms race. But it had made humanity very good at one thing: adapting. Now they adapted to the Velthari, got in a flooded bunker beneath what had once been Miami. A weapons team took apart a captured Velthari rifle. They studied every component, every material, every circuit. Then they built their own version. It was not a copy. It was better. The Velthari rifle fired a beam that could burn through steel. The human version fired a beam that could burn through Velthari scales. In an underground factory in the Ural Mountains, engineers built the first human ship capable of leaving the solar system. It was ugly, a patchwork of human technology and captured alien components, but it worked. It flew. It could fight. In a hidden base in Antarctica, biologists studied captured Velthari soldiers. They found weaknesses. The aliens were sensitive to certain frequencies of sound. They could not see well in specific wavelengths of light. Their nervous systems could be disrupted by certain chemicals. Every weakness was catalogued, shared, turned into a weapon. General Okonkwo, still coordinating the resistance from her bunker in Lagos, watched these reports come in and felt something she had not felt in 6 months. Hope. They think we are animals, she told her commanders during a secret meeting. They think we are prey that somehow got lucky. They do not understand that we have been doing this for our entire history. Every war we ever fought taught us something. Every enemy we ever faced made us stronger. She pulled up a holographic display showing Velthory positions across the globe. Red dots covered every continent, thousands of them, each one representing an alien occupation force. They have been ruling the stars for 12,000 years, she continued. They have not changed in all that time. We change every generation, every year, every day. They cannot keep up with us. They do not know how. The resistance began to use its new knowledge. Soldiers were equipped with weapons that could hurt the aliens. Traps were designed using frequencies that caused Velthory pain. Ambushes were planned using light conditions that blinded alien eyes. The Velthory started dying faster. K.E.T. Single quotes, VOR, felt the change from his flagship. Reports came in every day, each one worse than the last. Hunting parties were being wiped out. Ground bases were being attacked. Ships were being shot down by weapons that should not exist. He did not understand. He could not understand. The prey was supposed to break. The prey always broke. That was how the universe worked. He called his senior officers to a meeting and demanded answers. They had none. They were as confused as he was. They had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that got stronger instead of weaker, that learned instead of giving up. That turned every defeat into a lesson and every lesson into a weapon. They are not prey, one officer finally admitted. They never were. They never were. We made a mistake. Kethfer killed him for saying it, but that did not make it less true. The humans were not prey. They were predators, just like the Velthory. But where the Velthory had become lazy and stagnant, comfortable in their power, the humans were hungry, angry, desperate. There was an old human saying that the Velthory would never understand. Necessity is the mother of invention. Humans had spent their entire history inventing new ways to survive, new ways to fight, new ways to win. The Velthory had given them the greatest necessity they had ever faced, and humanity was inventing its response. In a mountain bunker, Dr. Tanaka made a breakthrough. She had been listening to Velthory communications for months, learning their language, understanding their command structure. Now she found something useful. I know where they come from, she reported to General Okonkwo. I know where their home world is. I know how to get there. Okonkwo stared at the data Tanaka had sent. A map of the galaxy with a single point marked in red. The Velthory Dominion. 12,000 years of history. Hundreds of conquered worlds. Billions of enemies who had been waiting for someone to fight back. How long until we can build a fleet? She asked. 6 months, Tanaka replied. Maybe less. Okonkwo smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally found its prey. Then we have work to do. 1 year after the Velthory came to Earth, humanity launched its counterattack. They called it Operation Prometheus, named after a figure from old human mythology who stole fire from the gods and gave it to mortals. It was a fitting name. Humanity had stolen fire from the Velthory. Now they were going to burn the gods with it. The fleet gathered in secret, hidden behind the dark side of Jupiter's largest moon. 300 ships, built in underground factories, crewed by soldiers who had lost everything. They were ugly ships, patched together from salvage and desperation, but they were deadly. Every weapon on board had been designed to kill Velthory. Every system had been tested against captured alien technology. Every crew member had trained for this moment. Admiral Chen Wei commanded the fleet from the bridge of the flagship, which the crew had named Vengeance. He was 61 years old, a career naval officer who had watched his family die in the first hour of the invasion. He had not slept more than 4 hours a night since then. He did not need to. Anger kept him awake. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. Chen Wei looked at the viewscreen, at the stars waiting beyond, at the path that would take them to the Velthari homeworld. He thought about everything humanity had suffered. The billions dead. The cities burned. The children taken to processing ships and turned into food for monsters. "Signal the fleet," he said. "We jump in 60 seconds. There was no hesitation, no second thoughts. The entire human species had agreed on one thing. The Velthari had to be stopped. Not defeated, not pushed back, not taught a lesson. Stopped. Permanently thought it was a decision that would have horrified humanity's ancestors. Before the invasion, humans had believed in mercy, in second chances, in rehabilitation. They had built laws and courts and prisons, all designed to give criminals another opportunity. They had believed that even the worst enemies could be reasoned with, negotiated with, eventually forgiven. The Velthari had taught them otherwise. You could not negotiate with a species that saw you as food. You could not reason with hunters who had been killing intelligent species for 12,000 years. You could not forgive monsters who had eaten your children. General Okonkwo, still on Earth, still coordinating the resistance, had explained it in her final broadcast before the fleet launched. "We are not doing this for revenge," she said, though everyone knew that was partly a lie. "We are doing this for survival. Not our survival. Our survival is already guaranteed. We have won on Earth. The aliens are dying faster than they can replace their losses. In another year, maybe 2, they will be gone from our world." She paused, her face hard on the screens of every resistance fighter, every refugee, every human who was still alive to watch. "But they will come back. They always come back. That is what they do. They have done it to 47 worlds before us. They will do it again. Unless we stop them. Unless we make sure they can never hunt again." The doctrine she outlined was simple and terrible. No mercy, no surrender, no half measures. The Velthari had built their empire on the bones of conquered species. Humanity would tear that empire down and salt the earth behind them. Some humans objected. They said it made humanity no better than the Velthari. They said there had to be another way, a peaceful way, a merciful way. They were shouted down, ignored, forgotten. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps, in another universe, there was a path that did not require so much blood. But humans were tired and angry and afraid, and they had learned a hard lesson. Some enemies cannot be reasoned with. Some threats cannot be left alive. The fleet jumped. The first Velthari colony world they reached was called Kethos Prime. It had been conquered 8,000 years ago. The original inhabitants had been eaten long since. Now it was home to 3 billion Velthari, along with slave populations from a dozen other conquered species. The battle lasted 6 hours. Velthari warships rushed to defend their world. But they were slow to react, confused by an enemy that should not exist. Human ships tore through their formations, using tactics the Velthari had never seen, weapons they could not counter. The alien fleet was destroyed in the first 2 hours. The orbital defenses fell in the next 2. Then the ground assault began. Human soldiers dropped from the sky in armored pods, landing in the middle of Velthari cities. They did not take prisoners. They did not accept surrender. They had seen what the Velthari did to species that surrendered. They had found the processing plants on Earth, the places where human bodies were prepared for transport, where human children were kept in cages waiting to be eaten. They remembered, and they showed no mercy. When it was over, Kethos Prime was silent. 3 billion Velthari were dead. The slave populations were freed, given weapons, given ships, given a choice. Join the human fleet or go home. Most joined. They had been waiting for someone to fight back for 8,000 years. Word spread through the Velthari dominion. The prey had become the predator. The hunters were being hunted. And they were losing. Supreme Huntmaster Kethver received the news on his flagship. Still orbiting Earth, still trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. He stared at the reports, at the images of Kathos Prime burning, at the casualty figures that could not possibly be real. "Recall the fleet," he ordered, his voice hollow. "All ships, return to the homeworld. We must defend." He trailed off. Defend what? Against what? The humans had ships now, hundreds of them, and more being built every day. They had weapons that could pierce Velthari armor. They had allies from conquered worlds, species who had spent millennia dreaming of revenge. They had anger that burned hotter than any star, and they were coming. Kethver thought about sending a message to the humans, offering peace, offering to leave Earth and never return. But he knew it would not matter. He had seen the look in human eyes when his warriors captured them. He had heard the recordings of human broadcasts, the speeches filled with cold fury, the promises of vengeance that made even Velthari blood run cold. The humans did not want peace. They wanted the Velthari gone, not defeated, not surrendered, gone. Kethver had spent his entire life hunting weaker species. He had killed millions with his own claws. He had never felt fear, never felt doubt, never felt anything but the joy of the hunt. Now, watching the reports come in from one dying colony after another, he felt something new. He felt hunted, and he knew, with the cold certainty of a predator who would finally become prey, that the hunters were not going to stop until he and everything he had ever built was dead. 3 years after the Velthari first came to Earth, the last Velthari world burned. Admiral Amara Okonkwo stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Use Leges, named after the city where her mother had led the resistance until the day she died. Around her, 5,000 human ships filled the void, the largest fleet ever assembled by any species in the history of the galaxy. They had fought their way across 100 star systems to reach this moment. They had liberated dozens of slave worlds. They had destroyed the Velthari fleet piece by piece, ship by ship, until nothing remained. Now, they orbited the Velthari homeworld. And the last chapter of this war was about to be written. The planet below was beautiful in its way. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds drifting across a world that had given birth to the most terrible predators the galaxy had ever known. 12,000 years of empire had started here. 12,000 years of hunting, of killing, of treating intelligent species as meat. It would end here too. Okonkwo was 31 years old. She had been 8 when the invasion began, a little girl hiding in a bunker while her grandmother, General Amara Okonkwo, fought to save humanity. She had grown up in the resistance, learning to fight before she learned to read, learning to hate before she learned to love. Her grandmother had died in the bombing that destroyed the Lagos bunker. Her mother had died leading a ground assault on a Velthari base. Her father had been taken to a processing ship in the first week and never seen again. She had joined the military the day she turned 16. She had risen through the ranks by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than anyone around her. She had commanded the assault on Kathos Prime, on Velthari Secundus, on a dozen other worlds whose names she barely remembered. She had killed so many aliens that she had stopped counting. Now she was here, at the end of everything, and she felt nothing but cold. Empty purpose. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we are receiving a transmission from the surface. The Velthari Supreme Council is asking to negotiate." Okonkwo did not laugh. She was too tired to laugh. "Put it through." The view screen flickered, and then she was looking at the face of a Velthari. It was old. Its scales faded to a dull gray, its eyes dim with age and fear. Behind it, she could see other Velthari, the members of their Supreme Council, the rulers of an empire that had lasted 12,000 years. Human commander, the old Valkyrie said, its translator turning growls and hisses into words. We offer unconditional surrender. We will give you our territory, our technology, our ships. We will pay whatever price you demand. We ask only that you spare our world. Spare our people. Okonkwo stared at the screen. She thought about her grandmother, about her mother, about her father. She thought about the billions of humans who had died in the first days of the invasion. She thought about the processing ships, the cages full of children, the aliens who had eaten her species like cattle. Do you know what you did to us? She asked quietly. The old Valkyrie hesitated. We hunted. It is what we do. What we have always done. We did not know you would be different. We did not understand. No, Okonkwo agreed. You did not understand. You saw us as prey, as food, as animals to be harvested. She leaned forward, and her voice dropped to something cold and terrible. You were wrong. We know that now. We have learned. Please, we will change. We will never hunt again. You will die, Okonkwo said. All of you. Every last one. Silence on the bridge. Silence from the view screen. The old Valkyrie stared at her with something like disbelief and something like despair. You would commit genocide? It whispered. You would destroy an entire species? Okonkwo did not blink. You committed genocide 47 times. 47 worlds wiped clean of intelligent life. Billions of souls eaten by your empire. Did you offer them mercy? Did you give them a chance to surrender? The Valkyrie had no answer. We are not monsters, Okonkwo continued. We did not choose this. You came to our world. You killed our families. You ate our children. We did not start this war, but we are going to finish it. She cut the transmission. For a long moment, she stood in silence, looking at the planet below. 5,000 ships waited for her order. Millions of soldiers, billions of freed slaves, the survivors of 100 conquered worlds, all of them watching, all of them waiting. She thought about mercy. She thought about what humanity had believed before the invasion, about second chances and rehabilitation and forgiveness. She thought about what her grandmother would have wanted, what her mother would have said. Then she thought about the processing ships, the cages, the children who had screamed as they were taken away. All ships, she said. Open fire. The sky over the Valkyrie homeworld turned white with weapons fire. Orbital platforms exploded. Defense stations melted. The last warships of the Valkyrie fleet, gathered to protect their world, were torn apart in seconds. And then the bombardment began. It lasted for 3 days. When it was over, the Valkyrie homeworld was silent. No cities remained. No population centers. No signs of life. 12,000 years of civilization, reduced to ash and rubble and memory. OKONKWO watched the final reports come in. Confirmed kills in the billions. Survival rate, 0. The Valkyrie Dominion, the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known, was gone. She felt no joy, no triumph, just exhaustion and a hollow kind of relief. It was over. 200 years later, a human survey ship discovered the ruins of the Valkyrie capital city. Dr. Sarah Chun, a xenoarchaeologist and distant descendant of Admiral Chen Wei, led the expedition. She walked through empty streets, past collapsed buildings, through the bones of a civilization that had once ruled the stars. In the center of the city, she found a monument. It had been carved in the final days, after the last Valkyrie realized that no mercy was coming, that no negotiation would save them. It was a warning, written in 100 languages, meant for any species that might find it after the end. Dr. Chun read it slowly, translating each word with care. Do not hunt the humans. Do not threaten the humans. do not make the humans afraid. Because when humans are afraid, they do not freeze, they do not run, they fight, and they do not stop. Fighting until everything that threatened them is gone. We saw them as prey. They saw use lifeless. Learn from use. Leave them alone. Dr. Chan took a picture of the monument. It would eventually hang in the entrance hall of the Galactic Diplomatic Corps. A reminder of what humanity was capable of when pushed, and why no one, in all the centuries that followed, ever pushed them again. She walked back to her ship through the silent ruins, past the bones of the species that had tried to eat humanity and had been eaten instead. Behind her, the wind blew through empty streets, carrying dust and ash and the memory of 12,000 years of empire. Ahead of her, the stars waited, full of life and wonder and species who had heard the story of the Volturi and the humans, and who knew better than to make the same mistake. The hunters had become the hunted, the prey had become predators, and the galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget.